Roger Harris, our parliamentarian, and a new welcome to our new business item, new person, new chair, Sheri Mulling. So we will have Sheri tell us all about new business items, and Roger will tell us how to act accordingly to Robert's Rules of Order. And he's always very entertaining, though it may sound like a dry subject. He certainly knows his stuff, and we always enjoy having him back. So with no further ado, I'd like to welcome everyone who's in attendance today, and know that you're in for a treat and learning how to navigate the state convention week after next. So with no further ado, Sheri, would you like to take off with new business items first?
Sure, I can do that. All right, get my screen shared. Okay. All right, hold on a minute and let me get my PowerPoint up. Okay, are we seeing my screen?
Yes, good.
Yes,
Hold
we
on.
are.
All right, give me just a moment because somehow I was at the end of it instead of the beginning of it. I guess because I was reviewing. All right, is that better?
Yes.
Title page. Okay, all good. All good. All right. Well, I'm really excited to be serving as the 2025 Convention New Business Items Chairperson. I do have some background in doing this with the NCAE active conventions. I served as NCAE president from 2008 to 2012. My name was Sheri Strickland at the time, which sometimes causes a little confusion. People are like, I think I know you, but that doesn't sound right. So hopefully it hasn't been too long and too far away for me to still remember how this is all supposed to work. But I'm very glad to have Roger and his support to help me if I lose my way. So I have a presentation today to talk about what new business items are and how you go about submitting them, and also what kind of action would be taking. We will be taking on new business items once we get to the convention floor. So we'll just start sort of with a working definition of a new business item. And often you will hear new business items called NBIs as a shorthand. So a new business item is a proposal over which the division has jurisdiction. So the division in this case is RSP, North Carolina Retired School Personnel. So it has to be something that we have jurisdiction over so that we can actually make happen what it is we say we want to happen. NBIs are related to substantive policies or programs, so they need to be related to something that's going on in the world of RSP, and they need to be specific. And new business items are terminable. They must be able to be accomplished within 1 year. And that year begins once the one convention ends, and it lasts until the next convention convenes. So it has to be able to be accomplished in that year. So a new business item should direct an action to be taken. So a new business item should tell us who is being asked to do what. And so a new business item could direct the president to do something. It could ask the board of directors to do something. It could request that the staff do something, or it could encourage the leadership to do something. Those would all be correct ways to form an NBI. Most of the time, we will see requests being used as the action. It would not be correct to say that we believe something, because belief statements are not NBIs, or that we would like something to happen, or that we think something should happen, or that we feel something should happen. So we want to be sure that we are using action verbs and that we are directing somebody to do something. In our case, for our division, the NBI should begin with the NCRSP Representative Assembly. So all NBIs should start this way, and then again, should direct somebody to do something. So it would be correct to say that the NCRSP Representative Assembly requests that the Board of Directors does something, or the NCRSP Representative Assembly asks that the NCRSP staff do something, or that the NCRSP Representative Assembly encourages the NCRSP President to do something. So it would not be correct for an individual, like the maker of the NBI, to make the request, or for a region to make the request, or for a local to make the request, because it is the representative assembly that's going to be taking the action on the new business item. So the representative assembly is the one directing the action. New business items should use concise language. You need to keep it clear and simple. And you should avoid using pronouns when writing an NBI. So this is not the time to show off your creative writing skills. It is not the time to put in extra adjectives and adverbs. If you've made one long sentence, you might want to think about making it into shorter 2 or 3 sentences. Do not write in first person. So an NBI should never say I or me. And in fact, it's really better to just avoid using pronouns altogether, because when we're seeking clarity, and a lot of times the floor debate comes about because someone isn't really understanding what it is that the maker is trying to ask to be done or to happen. So no I, no me. Even using it or they can be confusing, because you're trying to think, okay, what does it refer to, or who are they? So just go ahead and use the nouns and that the pronoun would be referring to, and leave out the pronouns altogether. I think that will tend to make things less confusing or open to interpretation when people read your new business item. So a new business item must also be accompanied by a rationale. And the rationale is going to explain why the submitter believes that this NBI should be approved by the Representative Assembly. So it should answer the question, how will this NBI help NCRSP? Now, when you write your rationale, you can use first person. So now you're trying to explain why you believe that this is an important action for the Representative Assembly to take. The rationale is not what you're debating on the floor, though. So if you want to speak to an NBI, you're speaking to the motion itself, not to the rationale. The rationale is just there to help us understand why the maker believes that this would be important for the Representative Assembly to pass or to approve. So when we get to the floor and we're taking action on a new business item, and I know that Roger will be talking more about how this all works, but just basically, the submitter of the NBI will move the NBI, and you simply need to say, I move new business item number, whatever it is. And then the seconder needs to second the motion by simply saying, I second. Then the submitter gets to speak to the motion by explaining what the NBI would do and why they believe it should be approved. And then other delegates have the opportunity to speak for or against the NBI. And so there are several actions that could be taken on that NBI. prior to even discussing the NBI, the maker could decide to withdraw or to modify it. After debate, the delegates could then pass, approve, or fail the NBI. So if it doesn't get a majority vote, the NBI could be referred to a committee or another governing body, or the NBI could be amended. So if someone wants to amend the NBI, they want to make some kind of change to the NBI itself, then the person wishing to do that would present their amendment. It would need to be seconded. Then the amendment would be discussed. And at that point, we're only discussing the amendment. And then the amendment would be voted on. So once that happens, we're back to the main motion and we're voting on it either as amended, or if the amendment failed, then we're back to the original language of the main motion. I think this is probably the place that can become the most confusing for delegates during discussion of new business items, is when amendments do occur, and being sure that it's the amendment that's being discussed. And once that has been dispensed with, then it's the main motion that has to be discussed again and voted on. And then also, oh, no, sorry, that's all I wanted to say about that. Again, when Roger does parliamentary procedure in a minute, I'm sure he's going to talk some more about that. And if you just make sure that you pay attention to the instructions from the chair, then you know, hopefully it will be clear what we're voting on at any given time. And we hope that we will also be able to get any amendment language typed in with the AV, the staff, and get that on the screen so that delegates will know when there's what the amendment actually says. So that's the plan. That's the goal, to make that all happen and make sure that everybody understands what we're discussing at any given time. Okay, so if you are thinking about submitting a new business item, they have to be submitted on the 2025 NBI form, which is found on the NCRSP website. And I'm going to tell you how to get to that in just a minute. The form itself can be popped out and downloaded, and it is fillable, so you can type on it. If you're going to submit an NBI, then it needs, if you're going to do it, if you already know you're going to do it, and you can complete the form before we get to convention, then you can go ahead and email it to me. So it's Sheri Strickland Mulling, and my email address, which is on the form. So you don't need to try to jot this down. It'll be on, it's already on the form. But my email address is sstrickland514@gmail.com. You can submit an NBI up until the end of the first business day of the Representative Assembly. So for 2025, that would be end of the day, March 26th. And Linda Gunter says that we will be adjourning the first day at 4:30. So NBIs can be submitted to the NBI table, which will be in the back of the room that we'll be meeting in, up until the end of the first business day. Paper forms will be available at the NBI table on the RA floor. If you use paper forms, please be sure that your handwriting is legible, and the completed forms would be turned into the NBI table, again, by the end of the first business day. And I'll be at the NBI table during the day. Members of the NBI committee will be there all day. So if you aren't sure about what you're writing, if you want somebody to look at it before you submit it, or you want to talk to one of us about it before you submit it, just come back to the NBI table and we can talk about it. Some of the things that we want to make sure about is that an NBI does not in any way conflict with any policies or procedures or bylaws or constitution of NCRSP. And if that issue is already addressed in one of the governing documents, then there wouldn't be any reason to have an NBI. So we'll have the governing documents. We'll take a look at those things. We'll also talk with you about cost implications. Everybody wants to just put 0 as the cost, but sometimes 0 is not the right answer. So we'll also take a look at that and have a discussion about that too. All right, this is what the form looks like. A lot of the information at the top isn't relevant anymore because this was if you wanted to get your NBI in time enough for it to be actually published in the convention manual, then that deadline was February 24th. So that's already happened. But again, you can continue to submit new business items through the end of the first day. And then after that, the NBI committee will make sure that all of the new NBIs are printed and distributed to the delegates at the beginning of the second business day, so March 27th. And the definition of an NBI is included here, a space to write in your NBI, to write in your rationale, to indicate the cost, the original submitter's information, and then the person that will be their seconder. So when we get to your NBI during debate on the floor, hopefully the maker is right ready to go with moving to the mic to move their NBI, and the seconder is right ready to go to move to the mic and second the NBI so that we can move things along efficiently. Yep, it's too late to mail it to me. At the bottom is my actual physical address. So that time has passed as well. So here are some new business item examples that hopefully represent the definition that we've just talked about. And are written in a concise way with no extra words or adjectives or adverbs or pronouns. So an example of a correctly written NBI might be NBI number 1, the NCRSP Representative Assembly requests that the NCRSP President write an article on the best practices of high-functioning locals for publication in the summer 2025 edition of the Panorama. So we know what the action is, we know who's supposed to be doing it, and we know that it is time sensitive. So summer of 2025 would certainly make this NBI happen within the year timetable or time frame. NBI number 2, the NCRSP Representative Assembly requests that the Board of Directors consider hosting a hospitality room on the evening before the first day of business of each RA. So the thinking here, or if I was writing the rationale, I might say something about people who travel in on the day before the RA is supposed to start. It would be nice for them to have somewhere to go, some social time. It is because I've said the first for each RA, that would mean going out into the future past 1 year, but the actual action is just what the Board of Directors is going to do. So the Board of Directors can consider this within the 1 year time frame. And when they consider it, they might consider doing it one time as a trial to see how it goes. They might decide this is a really bad idea and not support it at all. So all we're asking is that within the 1-year time frame, that the board of directors consider hosting a hospitality room. And then for number 3, the NCRSP Representative Assembly requests that every new member that joins NCRSP by the end of 2025 receive an NCRSP coffee mug and lapel pin. So again, time limited. I think it's clearly written and concise. There would be cost implications. So if someone wanted to submit an MBI like this, they would need to do a little research and have costed out, or at least have an estimate of a cost to include with the MBI. Okay, so some examples. So
Sheri,
yes,
Sandra Hatley here.
Yep.
Would you not agree that you would have to advise the maker of the supposed new business item number 1 that they would need to amend it to say fall of 2025? We don't have a summer edition.
yeah. So yes, either if somebody on the NBI committee already knew that, then we could help them revise that before it ever was printed. If nobody was aware of that and it ended up being printed, then during debate, someone hopefully would amend it. And I would assume that the maker would agree that that would be a friendly amendment to their NBI.
And Roger would tell you there's no such thing.
Yeah, I start to say, you're going to give me the ticks now. Don't give me the ticks.
Okay, well, somebody would amend it.
We'll fix it. Yeah, we fix it. We fix it.
We would get it fixed. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you, Sandra. Here are some NBIs that would not work very well. NBI number 4, we believe that NCRSP should build a new headquarters building as soon as possible. There are a lot of things wrong with this NBI. It doesn't start with the NCRSP Representative Assembly. It's a belief statement, not an action statement. And it really is not something we have jurisdiction over like it's written. So if this is something that the delegates or a delegate feels strongly about, it would need to be rewritten so that it would say something more about collaborating, or maybe we're going to have Linda write a letter about it, or something that we can, some action that we can actually take that's within our jurisdiction to make happen. But as this is written, this would not be an appropriate MBI. NBI number 5, the NCRSP Representative Assembly sincerely requests that We Are the World be adopted as the NCRSP theme song because it is beautiful and meaningful and everyone loves it, and I get choked up whenever I hear it. So many things, right? So we don't need sincerely, no extra verbs and adverbs. Beautiful, meaningful, maybe in the rationale that could go, and no first person in an NBI, so I get choked up. It's not appropriate in the NBI. Again, maybe in the rationale you could put something like that. But this NBI, I mean, it could be appropriate. We could say the NCRSP Representative Assembly requests that the Board of Directors consider adopting We Are the World as the NCRSP theme song, and then just stop and have that be the end of it. And then NBI number 6, the NCRSP Representative Assembly requests that NCRSP staff and leadership work to increase membership. First, I would say that this, there's really no action. So we would need to know exactly what needs to be done. What we're asking to be done. It is vague in terms of, you know, what the request is. It's not terminable. This is an ongoing, always going to be there kind of goal of NCRSP. So this one mostly is not appropriate because of vagueness. It's not specific enough. How it would be very difficult to report in a year what action had been taken. And I would say also it already exists, I'm sure, if we look at goals and policies and governing documents, that increasing membership is always part of what we're about. Okay, so if you are interested in writing an NBI, then the form, the 2025 NBI form, and a document, we've had a document already there on tips for writing NBIs. I just kind of updated it a little bit, but it's there on the website, on the NCRSP website. So to find the form, if you go to ncrsp.org and click on the menu in the upper left corner, in the menu is you can select 2025 convention work, and then under that you'll see NBI 2025. And if you use the arrow key at the top of the form, it will pop out and you can type on it, and then you'd be able to email the document to me. Again, my email address is on the instructions on the document. And the direct link is here. If you want to just go directly to the NBI form, I'm going to put this, while Roger's talking in a minute, I'll put this in the chat so you can access it from there as well. All right. Hopefully that's most of what you might ever want to know about an NBI. So otherwise, are there any questions? I'm going to stop. Well, I won't. I was going to say I'll stop sharing, but I'll wait a minute in case
I do have, how many NBIs have you already received? What are we looking at?
I have received no NBIs to date.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the blackboard is clear then.
Exactly. Yes. I mean, I suppose the next time, well, and yes, and anybody listening in today that wants to go ahead and submit can certainly do that. If you want to even submit something as a draft and just say, and send it to me and say, how does this look? Or am I on track or whatever? You can certainly just do that. And I'll try to support you along the way. But then when we get to the board meeting prior to the convention, you know, there's always some potential that the board may have some NBIs that they want to support. But then otherwise, we'll just be seeing who has something to turn in on the first day.
Well, thank you, Sheri. That was very clear and concise. And we look forward to hopefully having maybe a short business session at the convention, which would make Roger's job a lot easier, I presume.
A lot easier.
Okay, Roger, it's all yours to talk about
All right.
Robert's Rules of Order and Parliamentary Procedure.
All right, let me see if I can get my share going. All right. Is that working? Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
All right. All right. So LaVeta, Sheri, thank you everybody for being here. Again, my name is Roger Harris. I've served as parliamentarian for a number of different civic and government bodies over the years, but I don't want to embellish my resume. I am not a licensed parliamentarian, but I am a member of the North Carolina Association of Parliamentarians and the National Association of Parliamentarians. So it's something that I've studied for a long time and just always enjoyed. It's one of those subjects I think maybe like American history, it can be the most boring subject or the most fascinating subject, depending on how you kind of look at it. But I always like to start with just a minute or two with some history, because I'm an old history teacher, of who this guy Robert is. We have to have rules. Every organization has to have rules. And what I'm going to talk about today are Robert's rules. And it's applicable not just for NCRSP, but if you go to a school board meeting or a county commissioner meeting or most church meetings, pretty much everything I'm telling you today is useful there as well, because everybody has to have rules. There's different kinds of rules. If you ever watch the U.S. House and U.S. Senate, bless your heart, but if you watch those two bodies, be aware they have their own rules. They don't go by Robert's Rules of Order. So they've got some things like I yield my time to the gentleman from Kentucky and that kind of thing. That's their own rules. That's not Robert's Rules of Order. Most organizations have their own rules. It talks about chairman and who can vote. And whenever they have those rules take priority over Robert's Rules of Order. These rules go back hundreds of years. They go back to the Greeks and primarily the English Parliament. And when you think about the English Parliament, that's where we get the word parliamentary procedure, because it goes back to the rules of the British Parliament. And that Robert guy with this old ugly boy here, his name was Henry Robert. He was retired from the U.S. Army as a brigadier general, fought in the American Civil War. He was self-taught, first published in the 1870s. His original Robert's Rules of Order was very brief. I say that relatively. It was 176 pages long. Robert's Rules of Order now is almost 700 pages long. But the good news is most of that doesn't have anything to do with anything. Really, you use about 80% of the content is never used. If you can learn about 20% of it, you're going to lose that most of the time. And one of the rules that I always try to do is you never be stricter than necessary. When we get together with NCRSP, we're all friends, we're all colleagues. If somebody wants to do something and they don't know how, and they just stand up and say, I think we need to have a bathroom break or whatever, we need to help them and get that in parliamentary procedure and just all be friends when we're there. Because what's Robert's Rules of Order is, and all parliamentary procedures, there's a purpose for it. It does allow for majority rule, but it protects the rights of the minority. And those sound like opposites, but they aren't. We're going to allow for an orderly discussion, for a debate. It's not going to be a room full of everybody talking at one time. Nothing gets done that way. So there's an orderly discussion, an orderly debate, but we want to protect the rights of the minority. Somebody once said the majority rights don't need to be protected. It's the rights of the minority that need to be protected. And that's what Robert's Rules recognize, but it does adjust for the will of the majority. And that's what we want to think about. But there is a precedent, and Sheri talked about this just a little bit. There is a priority, and this is the way I think of it. All right, most of you that are in this chat room are mothers and grandmothers. When I was a little boy, and I wanted to climb a tree in my front yard, my big brother said it was okay for me to climb that tree, but my mama said I shouldn't climb that tree. All right, ladies, you tell me, do I need to climb that tree or not? My big brother says okay, but my mama said no. Answer is no, isn't it? Mama's rule overweighs that of the brother. So that's the way it is with parliamentary procedure. There are some rules that are more important than others. And if there's a conflict, one's got to win out. And in parliamentary procedure, our number one, our Bible, if you will, is the NCRSP Constitution. That's what we live by. Second to that are NCRSP bylaws. And then coming in third place is Robert's Rules of Order. So if there's a conflict, for example, between something that Robert's Rules of Order says and our NCRSP Constitution says, our Constitution is going to win out. That has the priority in our organization. And that priority is going to be important to us if there ever is a conflict, and occasionally there is. Somebody will say, well, doesn't Robert's Rules of Order say this? Yes, it does, but our Constitution says differently. So that's what we go by. And Sheri talked about this, how to make a motion. The three most important motions that you're going to hear in most of our meetings, as well as church meetings and everything else, is the main motion and then an amendment, and then rarely, but occasionally, you'll hear an amendment to an amendment. Mm-hmm. Those words always begin with the same three words, and those three words are, I move that. I move that. And it should be short and clear. Sheri talked about that just a little bit. You want to state clearly what you would like the organization to do. It can't be a vague idea. And Sheri talked about this. It'd be inappropriate for us to have a motion. I move we support public education. Well, what does that mean? You know, so it can't be a vague idea. And here's an example that might be a motion that you would hear either in NCRSP or some other organization. I move that we increase dues by $10 effective January 1st, 2026. As Sheri said, with new business items, that is clear, that tells exactly what you want it to do. And another member says, I second the motion. Now, this is one thing that I think is important. When a person seconds the motion, what they're saying is, I think that is worthy of discussion. It doesn't necessarily mean they agree with it. They might actually end up voting against it at the end. But what they're saying is, that is worthy of discussion, and we ought to talk about that. So I second that motion. Now, if it's something ridiculous, somebody says, I move that our convention next year will be held in Honolulu. Well, we're not going to do that. So nobody's going to second that. That's not worthy of discussion. But when you second a motion, it doesn't mean that you have to vote for it. It just means I think that is worthy of discussion. We need to talk about that. So you second a motion, and then properly what the chairman should do, or the chairwoman, should restate that motion so that everybody is clear what we're going to be talking about. She should say, it is moved and seconded that we increase dues by $10 effective January 1st, 2026. And just like Sheri said just a few minutes ago, the maker of the motion has the right to speak first. They made the motion. They have the right to speak first, and they ought to be able to do that. You can only have one main motion that can be considered in time, because it's awfully confusing if you had two up there. Somebody wants to increase dues, and somebody else wants to have a Christmas party. You can't do that. So only one main motion at a time, and you take care of those. Debate continues on that motion, and then when you're done, when everybody has had their say, the chairman should say something like, is there any further debate? Nobody says anything, and then she moves to the question. The question is on the adoption of the motion that we increase dues by $10 effective January 1st, 2026. And then you have a vote in majority rules. But what happens sometimes, and I should mention, proxies are not permitted. That's in our Constitution. Robert's Rules speaks about that as well. So proxy votes are not permitted. You can't say, well, Mary Beth went up to the room to change her clothes, but she told me to vote yes. No, you can't do that. Proxies are not considered. So there are ways that you make an amendment. Let's think about how that works, okay? This is the motion that we had a few minutes ago. Remember that? I move we increase dues by $10 effective January the 1st. And somebody says, I move that we change the effective date from January 1st to June 1st. That's an amendment. We're not really talking about even whether to increase dues or by how much, but this person says if we're going to do it, we ought to do it later in the year. It should be by June. That also has to be seconded. And now, just like Sheri said a minute ago, the question before the body now is the amendment. It's been moved and seconded that we change the date from January 1st to June 1st. That's the only thing we're considering now. We're not going to talk about the $10. We're not even going to talk about whether it's a good idea to increase dues or not. Just that motion to amend on the date and looking at how that amendment works. Again, just like a main motion, the maker of the amendment has the right to speak first. And there's no such thing, Sheri, bless your heart, no such thing as a friendly amendment. But this is how those things can sometimes be handled easily. If somebody says that the main motion, for example, has a misspelled word in it, okay, we need to fix that misspelled word. Well, what the chairman can do is the chairman can say, we're going to change the spelling without objection. Without objection. That means that it's not between the maker and it's up to the whole body. If anybody objects, then you can't do that. But that's sort of what a friendly amendment is. But what I've seen in times past is somebody will say, I'll offer a friendly amendment, and the maker of the motion says yes. Well, that's not a majority rule. That's just those two people making a decision. So that's why Robert's Rule says you can't have friendly amendments, but you can have simple things by unanimous consent. So Sandra Hatley's heard me talk about friendly amendments before. Debate continues on the motion. You keep talking about that, and then the chair puts the question about the amendment up there. Is there any further debate? The question is on the adoption of the motion to amend the effective date from January 1st, June 1st. So that's the only thing we're talking about, not the $10, just that. Then you have a vote, and the chair states the motion to amend has been adopted and the main motion has been amended, or if it fails, the motion to amend has not been adopted, and then you go back to the main motion, because the only thing you've taken care of is this amendment. I know that sounds kind of confusing, but you're just taking care of one part of it, and the main motion has still on the floor and has still not been decided. So there are rules about debate. Sheri touched on this just a little bit. Generally, now you folks are all teachers. You know what the word generally means. Generally, no one is permitted to speak a second time if there's someone else who's not had the opportunity to speak the first time. We call that in kindergarten waiting your turn. So if you've already had a turn, everybody else gets a turn before you get a second turn. And the comments always should be addressed to the chairman. You speak to the chairman, okay? That takes the personalities out. And all comments are supposed to be addressed to the chairman as if you're having a conversation with her. You know, Madam Chairman, I think $10 is too much. That's too much money. And you speak to the chairman whenever you're doing debate. And one of the important things is the comments must be germane. I heard one speaker say this word, you must use the F word. And the F word is focused. You have to have focused debate. The debate has to be on the issue that's there. Nobody can stand up and say, well, I tell you what's more important than raising the dues. We ought to have an additional secretary in the office. No, that's not related to the motion. It's got to be germane, and the F word, it's got to be focused to the question that is before us. You debate the issue, not the personalities. A chairman will rule you out of order and should rule you out of order if you stand up and say, well, it's pretty easy for you to raise $10. Your husband's a doctor. You can afford that. Well, you don't do those personality debates. It's the issue that is before you. You don't go to personalities. Ordinarily, you're limited to speaking 2 times on a single motion, and there's ways to get around that. But generally, that's it. You've had a turn. You've had a second turn. That's it. You know, you've had your turn at speaking things, and members may not yield the floor to somebody else. Congress does that, but that's not in Robert's Rules of Order, and that's not in our NCRA Constitution. So you can't stand up and say, well, I'm going to talk a little bit, but I yield to my friend to finish my speech. You can't do that. So then we get to the time to close debate, and you get recognized by the chairman, and this sometimes happens, okay? This is one of Roger Harris's pet peeves, okay? It gets time for debate, and you've heard all you want to, and somebody says, I moved the previous question. Now, you can also say, I called the question. That's old language, but everybody knows what you're talking about. We're all friends. And that's a motion to close debate. It must be seconded. The motion to call the question is not debatable. That'd be dumb, wouldn't it? To debate whether you ought to close debate. It cannot be amended. It cannot be changed. It does require a 2/3 vote. The reason it requires a 2/3 vote is you're taking away the rights of members. There may be somebody that had something to say, and they want to talk, and you're getting ready to close debate. You're taking away their rights. So if you're going to do that, there has to be a supermajority. It takes 2/3 vote to close that. And then if the motion to the previous question is adopted, then debate is over, and you move right to the main question. And you go directly there, and you look at those things. Parliamentary question. You got the question, not sure what's going on. And you say this. You say, Madam Chairman, I got a parliamentary inquiry. Now, that used to be called a point of order. It's new language now, but everybody knows what you're talking about if you use that language. And you state what you think is wrong, okay? I think a rule is being broken. It may be something like this. We said we were going to debate this thing for 10 minutes, and it's been going on for 12 minutes already. We're breaking the rule. It's gone on. Or it may just be a question that you've got, a parliamentary inquiry. Does this next vote require 2/3 vote or a simple majority? What does this require? Or you stand up and you say, Madam Chairman, I think we need to take a bathroom break. How do I do that? And she should be able to tell you how to do that. But those are parliamentary questions. It's not part of debate. It's just what you want to do. And here's some tips and reminders I like to remind folks. I am your parliamentarian. I'm not your chairman. I'm not your president. Nobody elected me to be president. I'm not Elon Musk. Nobody elected me. The chairman is the chairman. All right. We've got a president. Her name is Linda Gunter. Just because I'm sitting beside her, I'm not the chairman. She's the chairman of the assembly. I can give advice, but she is still the chairman. She can follow my advice or she can disregard my advice, but she is the chairman. So don't look for the parliamentarian to give a rule. I will give you my opinion, but the ruling is still up to the chairman. She's the referee. She is the president, whether I'm sitting there or not. The majority rules, but the minority has a right to be heard. All members are entitled to that fairness and courtesy. And even if they're taking a position that everybody else disagrees with, they have the right to be heard. And that means they have the right maybe to change some minds. They may explain it in a way that you didn't think about, and you maybe were for a motion, and now you're against it, hearing another view. So they've got the right to be heard. Only one matter can be considered at a time, only one main motion at a time. Remember, the maker of the motion has the right to speak first, and the governing documents, those documents that we have in our organization, they trump Robert's Rules of Order. And finally, a tie is a lost vote. Now, let me explain why that is, okay? If we say a majority is required for something to pass, suppose there's 100 people in the room. 50 people vote yes, 50 people vote no. You didn't get a majority. Majority means over half. You did not get over half. So a tie is a lost vote. It's not that you got to do anything over. It's just a lost vote. And let me give you some of my pet peeves. You know, everybody has some pet peeves. Well, here's your parliamentarian's pet peeves. There's my first one, Sheri. There's no such thing as a friendly amendment. You can handle it. Are there any objections? And handle it by unanimous consent. But it all, those of you know me, it's just one of my little pet peeves. There's no such thing as a friendly amendment, although I admit that every church meeting you go to, somebody's going to do a friendly amendment. But there's really no such thing. A motion to call the question is not an absolute power. This one is kind of serious, okay? It can't be called out from an audience. It's got to receive a second, requires a 2/3 vote. You've probably been in church meetings or something where this is happening. You're debating whatever the issue the church has or the board is having, and somebody in the middle of the room will holler out, "I call the question." And I've seen chairmen go, "The question's been called." Well, who died and made that man boss? Just because he hollered it out does not mean that you called the question and we've got to end debate. It has to be recognized by the chairman. You can't just holler it out from the audience. It has to receive a second. It's got to receive 2/3 vote. Because remember, you're taking away people's rights to debate. It's more serious than just some goober out in the audience hollering out, "I call the question." Majority means over half. It does not mean half plus one. I've heard that one a lot of times. Let's suppose that you've got a 9-member, like in Cleveland County, we have a 9-member Board of Education. I've heard folks say that majority means half plus one. Let's think about our 9-member Board of Education. What is 1/2 of 9? The answer, of course, is 4.5, right? 4.5 is half of 9. So if it's half plus one, 4.5 plus one is 5.5. It would take 5.5 to get a majority. Well, suppose the vote was 5-4, 5 yes and 4 no. Did the motion carry or not? It's over half, but it's not 5.5. So it's not half plus one. It just means whatever is more than half, whatever number that is. A body should not vote on the treasurer's report unless it's being referred to auditors. That's the only time. You've probably been in church meetings or something where a treasurer gives a report and folks will say, I move to approve the report. Well, I don't know if those numbers are right or not. I know that's what the treasurer said, but the only thing I'm going to do is receive it for information. Unless it's being referred to the auditors, you don't vote on that. It's a 700-page book, but I recommend this book to everybody. If you're interested in parliamentary procedure, there is when you and I were little, we had these things called Cliff Notes. This is sort of a Cliff Note version of Robert's Rules of Order. It's very brief. It's a paperback. I think it's only about 200 pages long. And really, the only thing you need to read are chapters 2 to 4. Takes you about 30 minutes. And I promise you, folks, if you read chapters 2 to 4 and you read that 30 minutes, you will know more than 99% of most rooms you go in, whether it's a church meeting or a county commissioners meeting or whatever. If you'll just read those few chapters right there, you're going to know more than pretty much anybody else. There's also a web page that you can go to, and it is really, really good, and I recommend it. It's called jimslaughter.com. It has charts and articles and all kinds of things, and all of his information is free, and it's all on his web page. And he's got a couple of sheets that look like this one, and you can get those and print them out. Actually, we've had them in the convention booklet the last couple of years because they are so good. And it tells you the most common motions that are coming to the floor, whether they require second, whether they're debatable, what the vote is. And there's just really, really good information in chart form. And that comes from Mr. Slaughter, and it's all free and it's all there. But it's a joy. I know parliamentary procedure can be a little bit intimidating, but again, you don't have to know all 700 pages. There's just a little bit you know, and you can take part in our representative assembly and feel like you're truly part. Are there any questions? I know I went through a lot of stuff, but I want to be respectful of your time, and I know we can get into the weeds sometimes, but if questions occur to you later, there's my phone number, there's my email. I even had folks last year, LaVeta, after the thing, call me about a question with their church, and that's okay. I'm happy to help with any of those things. So, any questions from anybody?
Yes, Mr. Harris, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
Okay, my name is Edith Berry. I wanted to ask, with the procedures that you mentioned about the budget, according to
Yes, ma'am.
the Robert's Rule of Order, is that
Yes, ma'am.
applicable to things of the church or any other organizations if someone is submitting, giving what the budget is? We're not, according to this, we're not really voting on it. We're just going by what he said or she said.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Thank you.
yeah, there's one thing I would point out, and just like I said, the NCRSP Constitution takes precedence. If your church has bylaws or your church constitution or some governing document within your church, that would take priority. But assuming that it does not conflict with that, then when a treasurer gets up and says, you know, our church had this much in tithes and offerings, and we spent this much this month, then you don't have to vote on that. That's just a report from your treasurer. Your church must approve a budget every year, just like NCRSP approves a budget every year. But just the treasurer's monthly report where they tell you what they brought in, what they spent, no, your church is doing right by not voting on that. Your church is doing the right thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. LaVeta, I think class ended on time.
It certainly sounds like it. We want to thank Roger and Sheri both for presenting today. And I'm sure that you're a little bit more prepared for our convention that will be occurring in about 2 weeks from today. And I look forward to seeing so many friendly faces there. It's always like old home week or homecoming at the church. So
That's right.
Again, thank everyone for attending today. And this information will be available to you on our website as well. And I encourage you always to go to the website and check things out because there's a lot of information there. And our next session of the Wednesday workshop will be on April the 9th. And look forward to seeing some of you return for that session as well. Any further questions from anything to say?
And I'll share this as your parliamentarian. If you have an NCRSP meeting coming up and you anticipate it's going to be a difficult one for whatever reason, and you feel like you need somebody with a little bit more parliamentarian experience by your side, I'm happy to go do that. I just consider that sort of part of my duty as your state parliamentarian. If you know there's something coming up and you just know ahead of time it's going to be a controversial issue and you feel like you need somebody by your side, I won't take your side necessarily, but I'll make sure that I can help you run the meeting and make sure that everybody's views are heard and that the minority rights are respected, but a majority rule wins. And I'll help you with that. Happy to go wherever. I just think that's part of my duty. And I don't charge anything for that. I'm happy to do it.
Thank you, Roger. You are always an awesome volunteer in our organization. Now that I can see all the friendly faces there, I'm going to ask if Tama, as the convention chair, would like to share anything with the body.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Hi.
Really look forward to seeing everyone at the convention on the 26th and 27th of March. And if you have not, if you're a delegate and have not completed the workshop registration form, please get that submitted so that we will have at least a good count of the numbers who are attending each one of the workshops. We do hope that you will enjoy everything that is being planned. And as I said before, we look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tama, and thank you for all that you do in organizing the convention. You have been an awesome leader in our organization for a long, long time, but you do a really grand job on the convention. I see that Ren, who is my co-chair, has stepped away. So, oh, there she's coming back.
Oh, she's
You know her
back.
name. She serves as co-chair of the Quality of Life Committee that sponsors or hosts the Wednesday workshop. So, Ren, do you have anything you'd like to share today? You're muted.
I'm sorry. Thank you for the good information because it was very helpful for somebody who has not been to a convention in many, many, many years. So I appreciate the updates. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And last of all, I'll call on our state president who's joined us today.
You're muted, Linda. There you go.
I was having a hard time getting over there. Click on it. Well, thank you so much to everybody for chiming in, and I am so proud of Roger as our parliamentarian. He is just awesome. And he said at first he would only serve 1 year, then he did 2, and then he did volunteer for the next 2. So I finally called him, and he said yes, he was waiting for my call. So he's devoted 4 years to us, and he has just been really remarkable. And then Sheri.
Well, the salary is really good, so I'll take it.
Yeah. and Sheri's our new MBI chair this year, and she's doing a great job. And I appreciate having Sheri. And I'm going to send you those PAT guidelines that you need.
Okay.
Because I want Sheri to help me to come up with maybe new business item for the NCAE convention. Are any of y'all going to the NCAE convention this weekend? Okay, yeah. Is anybody having a local meeting, like today, tomorrow, or Friday, in your local? I'm looking for a signature.
Cleveland County is tomorrow.
Who's tomorrow?
Cleveland County is having one tomorrow.
Oh, well, let me say, I didn't include you, I don't think. I've got this petition that we need to get signed in support of a constitutional amendment at the NCAE convention, and I need 50 signatures by Friday. So I got 12 from Ashe County this morning. If not, I can send it out, and I'm just going to have people like to, sign it and scan it and send it back to me. I can have one on a sheet if I need to, but I'm just trying to get enough signatures that will be viable. And Sandra and I have been working on this. It relates to, Lane and I are on the NCAE board, but if we are absent from the meeting, like if we're sick, we can't make it, the past president was our only person that we had to substitute for us due to actually have a vote. And Willie passed away and left us. So now we have nobody. It's like Tama came one day, but she couldn't vote. So we're trying to get the treasurer and the secretary and the past president to have 3 people as a backup, because every now and then there's something that's happening. And it's so simple that last year they rejected the amendment. So this year I've got the amendment like they want it written. And so hopefully we'll get this passed. And I will become a past president at some point next year. That position will be filled. But so if you can, I'll send that to you, and maybe that'll help us with our signatures. The other thing is, I think Carol's on board. Carol, you got a lot of mail. You said she deposited $4,500 yesterday. And how many delegates do we have so far?
We have 199 so far.
Okay. All right. And that includes the virtual?
It does. There's 17 virtual. But everyone is so busy with NCAE preparations. We didn't have our mail on time today, so hopefully we'll have some more tomorrow by the deadline.
Right, because we had over 125 rooms booked. In fact, if you call in to get a room, they're gonna refer you to another hotel. So that is just amazing, because we had 80 rooms one year and we couldn't get a fill. We were struggling. So to think that, we just kept enlarging the block, and we're the only group in the hotel. So it's basically, it's all for us, except they'll have a few other guests. But we did spot some rooms online that you could get, but they were more expensive. So that's all thing. The discount ends the 13th, which is tomorrow. So if you've got anybody that hasn't booked the room, tell them to book the room. But it's going to be a big crowd, so this is great. So thank you so much.
We certainly look forward to it. I would like to also thank Carol McLam, who is our staff person, who helps to facilitate our Wednesday workshop. She's behind the scenes doing all of the technical parts of like getting you registered and approving everybody to come into the meeting. So I like always to thank Carol for her support. And one final time, I'll say thank you again to Sheri and to Roger for being our presenters today. We look forward to having you back again next year. So go ahead and put it on your calendar. And everybody have a good afternoon with this beautiful sunshiny day here in North Carolina.
Thank you, LaVeta.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a good one.
Bye.
And good to see you.